welcome to this week's edition of Pickin' and Puttin'. Dr. Z here with Liberty Bill, Chicago South Studios. In the background there, you got 9 Mile Beach in Jamaica. We'll get to why we got that on my video. And Bill, you got any shout outs you want to do today?
I do. You know, everyone's been talking about the Chiefs offensive line coming off of their Super Bowl loss.
Yeah.
And I think folks have forgotten about Laurent Duvernay Tardif. He was the first player to opt out of the season due to concerns over the pandemic. And what did he do? Well, he's a doctor. He returned to the medical field in Canada and has been on the front lines fighting the pandemic this entire time. This is a guy that started 57 games since 2015 for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think he's been a little bit forgotten about in terms of the offensive line issues, and just here to shout him out for taking a year away from football, potentially costing an opportunity to win a championship to help us out medically. So shout out to Lauren.
Oh, yeah, man. He's awesome. And Andy Reid was totally supportive of him. Awesome. Andy said, you go for it, young man. I'm all for you, and your spot's here when you come back.
Yep. Good
for him. Yeah, my shout out is to Dolly Parton, for one, who you know, she's classy. She came out and the Tennessee legislature was going to put a statue of her on the Capitol grounds. And she said, you know what? This isn't the time or the place for me to have a statue out front of the Capitol. She says, maybe someday, and maybe when I'm gone, if you want to do that, that's fine. But not now. You know, she got a touch of class. The other one, isn't she? Yeah.
We need to get to Dolly World. It's been way too long. I got to take the little guy there.
No, I haven't been there. Well, yeah, it's in the Smokies. It's right on the North Carolina border of Tennessee. It's a cool place. I did go there once, a long time ago. The other shout out I got is Chris Zollinger, my son, who helped do all this stuff, edited. Oh, by the way, we moved our YouTube page. It's over to called Pickin' and Puttin' with Dr. Z and Liberty Bill. So if you're looking for us on YouTube, that's our new site, and it's up there, so you'll be able to find us on YouTube. Well, today I wanted to do this, and now I'm gonna screw it up. Wait a second here. Jammin with you. Jammin. That's Bob Marley and the Wailers. And so today I thought we'd talk about Bob Marley for our music story. And like I said, that's 9 Mile Beach, where he was born in 1945. And it's a cool story because in this era of legalizing cannabis and all these kind of things, Bob Marley is still a cult hero, even though he wasn't ever looking for that. But he's a cool story. He was born in Jamaica. His dad was a white naval officer, about 60 years old, and his mother was a 19-year-old native. And he really never knew or liked his father. His father died in 55 when he was 10 of an MI. So he was always with his mother. And he was musical from the get-go. And early in the 60s, he started a group, and they were called Bob Marley and the Wailers, which is a great name. In fact, he had one wife, Rita, from 66 to 81, and 81's the year he died. And I can't help but go back to that time frame in terms of, remember, that's 40 years ago. It's even before your time, Billy. And in that time period, around 1980, we lost Elvis, John Lennon, and Bob Marley. And Bob Marley was the first great third world superstar of music. You know, he was the first guy to come along that came from somewhere other than the big developed countries and became a superhero. But his original group was called the Wailing Wailers, and his big break came in 72, which would have made him about, 45, what was that, 27? And so he didn't have a long career. 72 and 81, he's gone. But he signed a big record deal, and they went along, and the big hit music that we all remember is Who Shot the Sheriff?
Yep.
And Eric Clapton made it a big hit in 74 on his own, but they had it on their album. So he had written that song. And of course, you know, We Be Jammin' and all these other songs you hear about.
Stir It Up.
Yeah, Stir It Up. And he had a famous, his big album, which he made later in the late 70s, was called Exodus. And that became kind of a landmark album for music. But the other thing I wanted to say about him that I thought was interesting was, from a medical perspective, people always wonder, well, what did he die from? And even though he was a dark-skinned gentleman, melanoma is still a dangerous disease. It's a skin cancer. And you get it on your palms, between your toes, and whatever. And for some reason, he had this little growth between his toes in 77, and they diagnosed melanoma. Well, in today's world, you just would have taken the toe off and he probably would have been cured and still be here today.
Wow.
But he refused to have the amputation and surgery. And so he went off and had, you know, alternative therapies in Germany and stuff. But then he only lived another 4 years, which is kind of sad to me. You know, just knowing he left Jamaica in 76 because they were doing a show, and Jamaica had a lot of unrest back then with poverty and that. He got shot, and his wife, and they both survived it, but they did their concert. I don't know the specifics of that, but then they left Jamaica and went to London, and then when he knew he was dying, he was trying to get back to Jamaica, and he ended up passing away in Miami. So that's kind of the history of his life in a nutshell. But fascinating guy. I mean, his opening when he got his big record deal, his opening, he was the opening act. Think about this. He was the opening act for Springsteen and Sly and the Family Stone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where do I get a recording of that concert?
Yeah. Well, think about it. Every time you go to the Caribbean, if you go down to the Caribbean, anybody travels there, there's virtually nowhere you can go without going to the pool bar or the beach bar, and who's playing in the background? Bob Marley. I mean, you know, you can say what you want, but he's a pretty cool guy. So, you know, that's your little music story of the day, but I find him fascinating. I mean, to grow up in a place like that behind you, it's an exquisite place. A little different from 40 years ago, I'm sure, but
like
cool.
Brings up a recent thing I read about related to Bob Marley. So the 1990s, you know, the hip hop music doesn't really hold up, frankly. A lot of it's like money, cash, hoes, or let's go shoot a bunch of people and deal a bunch of drugs. You know, that stuff doesn't really hold up. But there was a band called the Fugees that you may have heard. Lauryn Hill, you might recognize, Wyclef Jean. There were a couple of members of that group. In 1996, they released an album called The Score, and their inspiration was Bob Marley. Wyclef immigrated from Haiti, so they were from the small islands, and they had the same struggle, and they used the same concepts that Bob did. I mean, Bob had those chill melodies, but within those lyrics, there's some pretty strong revolution-like commentary on the state of affairs that he was dealing with in Jamaica and the world abroad, and the Fugees brought that back to life in 1996, and I actually just went back and listened to that album last week, and it's funny listening to it from a different lens now, the Bob Marley influence. It's like, wow, they were kind of the modern day Bob Marley carrying forward the legacy. So it's so cool to see a transformative figure like that. He was gone way too soon, but clearly his impact is still held today in music. And like you say, the island vibes, man, when you go down there, it's just a state of being that I think, me personally, I need to do more of. Just relax and enjoy the moment.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is his driving were blues. You know, Elvis was one of his favorites. Those kind of guys that came out of the 60s and B.B. King, those kind of guys were his thing. The most interesting thing about all the political stuff with him personally was he went through a very religious phase. I forget,
Rastafarian?
Yeah, Rastafarian was a religious movement. in the 70s. It's got some religious background that way. Anyways, point being is he was, for all of that you take and put with him, his true personality, if you and I were sitting down at the table with him, was he was pretty much pacifist. He wasn't in your face with all this. He just was making statements, but he wasn't, down there ready to go, in front of the courthouse or whatever. So it was an interesting, he had a lot of influence. And those were tough times. And he was raised in a tough time. I mean, he had a huge family. I mean, he had one wife from I told you, from 66 to 81, Rita, but he had 11 children. So and a lot of them are still alive and successful, and a couple of his sons in the music business. But
yeah, Ziggy Marley, I saw him at some music festival he was performing at.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. You take the name and you go to the next level with it. So it was pretty cool. So, well, you and I were talking about the developmental sports leagues, and I thought that was a kind of interesting topic, in that every major sports league now, we're in this transition, and it's got to go ahead and happen, because it's basically, barring the pandemic, it's basically ruined college basketball. And I'm all for, at this point, to have a G League and a F League and an H League and an I League.
An XFL.
Yeah, I mean, take it just like you got baseball, A, AA, AAA, but go ahead with it and pay them, and move on. I mean, baseball's had that in effect. Now, baseball, of course, you were showing me, is downsizing this year tremendously, which is good and bad. It's good in that that the salaries for these guys will go up, because they've been hired. You talk about minimum wage for an athlete, they haven't been making squat.
Oh, it was insane. I mean, just like an entire team splitting a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter, and that's dinner. I mean, insane.
Well, hey, especially when you turn around and see the Padres sign a $340 million 14-year contract that is guaranteed money, folks. That's not like the NFL contracts where they give you a signing bonus, and then cut you and have a nice day. This is, so there's a lot of money in baseball, and so they're making that move, and I think that's a good thing. What I was going to say is, I think it's sad if you lose. Like, tell the folks out there, what is your favorite minor league venue that you've ever been to?
That would be right here in Charlotte, BB&T Ballpark.
Well, BB&T, yeah, but okay, give me a single A venue.
Myrtle Beach.
Yes. So if you go and eliminate a Myrtle Beach, and they're not eliminated, I read up, but those small venues in places like Montana or Vermont, they're the community. Binghamton, that was the one where Tebow was playing,
Tebow retired.
Yeah, Tebow retired. Well, that's okay. I mean, let's not go into that. They should have brought him up for one bat in the major leagues just to get it over with. They'd have filled the stadium for, a series, and then whatever. I always kind of wish they'd done that, but I get it. He was pulling his Michael Jordan, and he's a great athlete, and I didn't have a problem with that. But what I was interested in was the one you also showed about the golf tour.
Yeah, the Advocates Pro Golf Association.
Yeah, and I looked it up, and there are 8 tournaments. And I think some of these guys bounce back and forth between, like, the Mackenzie Tour, the Canadian Tour. It's like golf is this minor league of, you're on your own. You are the company, and if you don't make the cut on, Friday, then you don't make any money, but you still have to pay for your room, your food, your travel. So it's a fun life maybe when you're in 20s, and then you get a wife and a kid, and it becomes a tough road to hoe. but I was excited to see him doing that. I'd love to hear the thoughts of some of the young black golf, like HV3 or the couple young men we talked about last weekend.
Yeah, Willie Mack shot a 1-under yesterday.
Did he?
On the first round. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was looking, I'm thinking the cut's going to be around, I don't know where the cut, probably around par, a little over, because the score, it ended up the leader shot a 64, but, and
I don't
guess
think
who
there is
that
a cut.
was? Sam Burns.
Sammy, yeah, Corn Ferry graduate.
Yeah, well, he was the guy I picked last week, remember?
Yes.
I had him and Paul Casey, so I made
And
about
Spieth.
100,000 last week. I should have been leading the golf shop show, but I don't know.
Well, technically, you're supposed to pick a true underdog along with two of the favorites.
Well, Sam Burns was a true underdog.
I don't think he was.
Oh, come on.
You'd be surprised. You got to get pretty far down there. You got to get down into Tringale territory or Siwoo Kim or Maverick McNeely, those types of guys.
Hey, Maverick McNeely was a good story. He almost got in the playoff.
That's true.
I mean, he came in, he made $750,000. That kind of, he's a good player though. He's a Stanford guy. He's gonna be there. He's kind of like, I'll tell you who the smoking gun is for this weekend with the Riviera is Patrick Cantlay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been swinging.
He's due.
Yeah, he's due, and if he can just make a few putts, he's gonna be due. Well, what do you think about all these other leagues? I mean, tell me what you're.
So piggybacking off of your Fernando Tatis contract extension and small point there's actually a firm out of Latin America that gives these guys, these prospects, upfront money. So when Tatis was 19 years old, he was a no-name prospect, despite the fact his dad played in the bigs for over a decade. So they gave him, we don't know what the amount of money is, but this firm gave him X amount of dollars to receive X percentage of his ultimate earnings at the major league level. So they could be making up to 10% of that record-breaking contract. But the interesting thing is, how do we get more people like Fernando Tatis, more minorities in the game? And how do we solve this disparity where they make absolutely nothing in peanuts until they hit it, and then they make $500 gazillion? So that's where I'm pleased to see golf investing in that APGA to try to get minorities a scholarship to reduce that $100,000 of cost that you mentioned, the travel, the equipment, just getting to every single tournament. If you can just give these guys a couple of years where that burden is relieved, they'll have a better chance of making it. And we talked last week a little bit about youth sports participation and that decline. And I think it's really important for these leagues to truly invest in formal developmental leagues. And we're seeing that with the NBA, with the G League, where now players don't have to go to college. They can go play on that G League Ignite, and they'll play against other NBA players and kind of ease into it. And then on Major League Baseball, I know, I get it. There's nostalgia and people are upset and there's no longer minor league baseball in Idaho. I get it. But if you look at the big picture, what they've really done is streamline the process. And they've, as you mentioned, increased player compensation significantly. And there aren't going to be those underdog stories, right? Like David Bodie plays for the Cubs. In this new world, he'll never make it to the major leagues. And that kind of sucks, right? The guy who just toils away in the minor leagues for 7 or 8 years, and he has the financial wherewithal to keep doing it, and he finally breaks through. I don't think that's going to happen anymore, but the reality is that was less than 1% of those guys that were toiling away, so the game will be fine. The best example, look at Minnesota. Their AAA team was way out in Rochester, New York. Now it's in St. Paul. Yeah, so it just makes sense what they did. And then the other people are upset they changed the names of the leagues. That's just nostalgia. They're going to sponsor the leagues. And again, if more of that money is trickling down to the players, it's all good. So I'm encouraged by a lot of this, but really shout out to golf for specifically that APGA league and targeting minorities and helping bring them along, because it's good for the game. It's good for everybody.
Well, that golf started over a decade ago with First Tee and kind of like boys and girls clubs, and making the effort to get those kids the equipment, and donated equipment and get them out there and get exposed to golf. I think the hard part I have for going back to baseball was, I mean, when you go to Tatis, I mean, that's basically, okay, they're betting on, okay, he's Ken Griffey Jr., the next generation, you know? And I go, well, baseball to me, and I've had this conversation with you before, I think baseball lost an entire generation of children when they moved everything to after 8:30, all games. You know,
and it's so expensive to go to a game.
And playoff games and stuff. And
you can't bring a kid to a game.
Well, and you talk about they lost the great athletes, the black generation of great athletes. The NBA hooked all those guys in the 90s. Now, the problem I have is take 14 times 32, and that's the number of guys who are in the NBA. And it's a pipe dream for all these young kids that are playing basketball to think they're going to get there.
Yep.
And that's the only downside that I worry about this. I worry that they go there and they can't get their education. But something has to change there. You have to allow those kids to go ahead and pursue their dream, just like you and I could go out at 16 and get a job doing whatever. It's not our right to deny them that.
Yep.
But then on the other side of that, with baseball and inner city and that baseball, just an example here in our own community, are why they don't have baseball anymore. They don't have slow pitch. They don't have little league. There's one little league in town. They do have t-ball, you know, at that age of 4 to 5. And then it kind of, you got to go find it if you're really interested in baseball.
I could tell you last night here, or 2 nights ago in February, that those South Charlotte baseball fields behind my house were packed. All the cages were full. There were teams on every field. I couldn't believe it. I was joking. Pitchers and catchers may be reporting in Arizona. We got the whole damn team reporting here in Charlotte, North Carolina. They're ready to go.
Well, that's good to see, because that's a grassroots. You're just telling me some grassroots definition of the sport. I think part of the growth for that, remember, is the moms. They're not looking to take their 8-year-old and let them play football or lacrosse, for that matter. Even though lacrosse, great, anything that's contact.
Soccer.
Yeah, so they're well. See, yeah, there's another whole thing when you think about.
Everybody rips on the NFL, but whenever soccer acknowledges its concussion problem, I'm here for it.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you think about heading the ball in a 10-year-old, 12-year-old kid, I don't know why you'd think it wouldn't have, you know, prolonged bruising. It's just bruising of the brain is what that amounts to. And you think about, you've got a you know, an orange inside of a fixed thing that bounces around. I mean, you know, whatever.
I'd be curious though, Charlotte specifically, and I don't know how we would survey this or figure out whether it's a real thing, but my issue, like if we lived in Chicago, it would be incredibly burdensome to bring my son to multiple Cubs games a year. Financially, parking, getting down there, just the whole thing, bunch of drunk people everywhere, just not a great place to bring a kid. Whereas here in Charlotte, a Knights game, I can sit right behind the net. It's cheap. I can park easily. I can eat all the food I want. I can get home. Home are the Dragons there, all that. I wonder for these young kids that live here in Charlotte that are getting to go to Knights games, if they're catching the bug of baseball that way. Where some kids in other cities like Boston, New York, Chicago, yeah, they got the big major league team, but I don't know. For me, it's going to the games as a kid is where I fell in love with the sport. It was playing the sport and going to the games. Well,
I will tell you, I've said for 30 years that the best ticket in major league sports is minor league baseball.
When it's done right, I agree.
Because you can go, parking's easy, the tickets are fair price, you get a hot dog, you can get a beer, throw peanuts, you know, get cotton candy, all the stuff you want. You can take your kid. And in the 4th inning, you can go home when it's time for him to sleep, because whether you lose 6-5 is not your driving force.
Yep. You know? And you're just going out there for fun.
You're going out there for the entertainment. Now you get to know the players. And the saddest part that your mother-in-law and I found out was when we go to the games and then we really like this guy and he's really doing well. And the next thing you know, he's called up. But that's the business. That's good for them, you know, but you all of a sudden you go, hey, where did Delmonico go? Oh, he's playing left field for the White Sox. Oh, okay, sorry.
But you also get the random injury rehabilitations. I was sitting at a game and I was like, I recognize that giant man. Oh, yeah. That's Atlanta Braves first baseman Freddie Freeman. And I Google, he's on an injury assignment. And there you are, 10 feet away from a major leaguer. It's such a cool experience. Oh, yeah. Not to mention the fireworks.
We had third baseline seats. And the problem is every time I go to a fireworks show, they go extra innings. and then I'm falling asleep. That's when I was all for put the guy on third base and start the extra. I don't even have to have second base.
They are bringing that rule back, by the way. I like that rule.
Yeah, I think that, you know, there's some of those rules that are hard to enforce, like pitch clocks and stuff, because when you go to the game and you watch them, they go down to 0 and you know, when are they ever going to call the guy on it, you know, and call
Same thing in golf. They might start doing shot clocks in golf.
Oh, if you, that's another thing altogether, because so I watched yesterday from the production from Los Angeles, and the 10th hole, they have a drivable par. It's probably one of the great par fours in all of golf outside of the Connecticut one, and 14th at Quail Hollow is drivable, but they play the 10th hole and it's everything you want at Riviera. Well, so DeChambeau, and I forget if he's playing with Rory. No, he wasn't playing with Rory, or maybe he was, but whoever he was playing with, they're up on the green and it's a drivable par four. So usually the group on the green steps to the back and allows the other group to hit their tee balls, and then they go ahead and finish out once they're on the green. Well, DeChambeau's on the green, and he and Koepka just don't like each other. And so DeChambeau's up there. The group in front of them is already on the green on the next hole, which is a par 5, and they're still diddling around the green. And he's putting the ball on, checking his thing, doing it. And Koepka's on the tee, put his ball on the ground. Finally, he pulls his ball out of the ground, walks back to the back of the tee, crosses his arms like, come on, you know. And he was beside himself. He would have hit him with his driver if he could. And so finally they clear the green. Koepka sticks his ball in and goes, boom. I mean, he hit his ball he looked like you or me playing.
He was ready to go.
He hit his ball in 10 seconds, hit it up in front of the green, chipped up, made birdie. So it shows you, you know, this stuff, when they go to rangefinders at the majors, it is not going to speed up play. The only time it'll speed up play, and they showed an example yesterday, is if you drive it so far out of like Justin's Thomas hit a few drives off. Jordan's hit them sideways a few times. Yeah. If you're out there in the next county on another fairway, then the yardage thing probably does help you. But if you're hitting it down the middle and you got sprinkler heads and you got your caddy there, I don't know that it's going to help. But that's just me.
Let's get a shot clock going.
Yeah, a shot clock. Well, got anything else you want to say, man?
Yeah, Iowa beat Wisconsin, so I got.
Yeah, I saw that. Garza is going to be Player of the Year, and I heard Jay Bielis talk about that. He's a great player. It's very hard. I mean, North Carolina, for example, has played one game. Roy Williams found the guys on Twitter and asked them if they wanted to play Northeastern, and they came down and played a game. I mean, they've played 2 games in the last 4 weeks. And then I don't know. If Gonzaga is going to win it, this is their year. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I think hopefully Gonzaga, Baylor. I think Illinois is a Final Four team as well. Those 3 teams I think will be in the final.
Yeah, well, they'll be number 1 seeds. I don't know how the difference is without crowds and you play in a bubble. It's just different.
It's going to be interesting. I just hope they get there.
Yeah,
and all the teams are able to play, because it will be a lot of fun if they get there.
Well, I got a couple quotes for you. You're going to like, these are Bob Marley quotes.
Oh, good.
Okay. So the second one's real easy because you're going to remember this. Bob Marley said, one good thing about music is when it hits you, you feel no pain.
Oh, that's a good one.
And the other one, he said, don't worry about a thing. Every little thing gonna be all right. And then bring me over one of those drinks with an umbrella in it.
We could all use one of those in mid-February.
Yeah, either that or La Vida Más Fina with, he's sitting on the beach, the rapper. Famous
Snoop.
guy. Huh?
Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, Snoop. So I'm down there. I'm going to be with Snoop right up there at that bar listening to Bob Marley. Well, folks, we enjoyed having you this week for Picking and Putting. Remember, we're on all the platforms. Find our new YouTube channel. It's Picking and Putting with Dr. Z and Liberty Bill. We just add a little bit to make it. Our old channel's still there, but you can find us there. Subscribe, ring the bell. We've joined Patreon, so happy to donate to us. Give us a little money on there so we can support the show and get some better guests. Next week, after all these ice storms, we're hoping to have Mike and Stick from Memphis talk a little Beale Street music. So we all you folks are out there suffering, just think of that place behind me and go there in your mind, if nothing else. We're thinking of you. Have a good one, Billy. We'll see you next time. Go say hi to the little one.
Go Hawks. Take care, everybody.
Go Hawks.